All right, guys, I'm not going to bury the lead on this one. I actually really enjoyed this movie, but if I'm being honest, I do think it missed it by just that much.
Ah, yes, the old podcast trick. Let's go pick those berries.
Join us on a journey as we frolic through fields of filmmaking follies. Join us on this week's episode of Raspberry Fields Forever.
You suck.
What's up, everyone? Jesse Rodden here again to bring you another exciting episode of Raspberry Fields Forever. And with me, as always, is my co-host and heterosexual life mate, Mr. Kieran Gibbs. Kieran, how you doing today, bud?
Hey, baby. I'm real happy. I'm real happy.
It is nice to actually come across one that you enjoy, right?
Yeah, and I feel like we're spoiling things a little bit, but like even I just can't bear the lead on this stuff because I'm overjoyed. I felt throughout, like, and we're gonna get into it in our subsequent segments, but I can't remember like the first 10 minutes being like, oh my God, this is delightful. Like Xanadu was fun, but for the most part, I was like, what the fuck's going on here? And there's a hint of that in this, but I had a lovely time and I'm doing lovely. How are you, my friend?
I am doing fantastic. I mean, this movie put a smile on my face. This was the one that you didn't have to force me to watch. I've seen this movie before. I enjoy this movie. My dad showed me this movie back in the day. He could actually get away with it because it was a movie that surprisingly is rated PG.
That's PG the same way, like what, Smoking the Bandit's PG?
Yeah, I guess you're pretty much right. And this is kind of from that same era as well. Let's talk about it a little bit before we really get into the meat potatoes. Let's talk about the stars. Let's talk about the director. Let's talk about who was involved with this flick. Because no wonder I actually love this movie because, I mean, let's just go ahead and say it. Don Adams, the Get Smart TV show, was great. I absolutely loved it. I mean, it was a spoof of your spy movies of the time, like your James Bonds. And Don Adams did a great job, a fantastic job of playing the bumbling spy character. On top of that, you also have Andrea Howard in this film, and you also have Sylvia Christel and Dana Eklar, who played the chief, Norman Lloyd, who played Carruthers, which probably my favorite character was Carruthers. I absolutely loved him and Don Adams back and forth.
Man, if I had to pick a favorite character, I really like the fellow with the one eye patch, the one arm, whose name escapes me right now.
Victorio Gassman, who played Norman Saint Sauvage, and the guy with the eye patch in the one hand, played both characters.
It was Dino, I think, was the name. But any hooser, here's the thing about the Nude Bomb that I think is going to be important to preface before we go into Here's the thing about the Nude Bomb that I think would be really important to just kind of overview before we get into the nitty gritty of this plot. The Nude Bomb, like we said earlier, it's a Get Smart film. Get Smart was a television series from 1965 to 1970. This movie was made in 1980. So my biggest thing about this movie is in a few different places. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it was kind of ahead of its time. And this is another instance in which it's ahead of its time because this came out in 1980. What's going on right now, Jesse? The Legacy sequel. You can't go, 3 months without some new show being continued, be it Saved by the Bell, reinvention of Bel Air, a continuation of Boy Meets World, something like that.
Oh, absolutely. And Get Smart has had a reboot in recent years with Steve Carell, which honestly was a great person to play that character because him and Don Adams share so many similarities. It's ridiculous. I thought that was actually a pretty good movie whenever it came out.
It was directed by Clive Donner, and I Googled to see if there was any relation to Richard. I do not think there is.
Any other movies or anything like that he's done?
It's a film called The Guest from 1963, Danger Man 1960, Old Dracula 1974, and then Nothing But the Best in 1964.
Okay. All right. Well, anyways, one of the writers and one of the co-creators is Mr. Mel Brooks, who is a legend, an icon in film and in comedy and in satire. Absolutely love him. I mean, he's the director for some of my favorite comedies of all time.
And the thing about this movie is the fingerprints of Mel Brooks are all over this. I don't know how direct he was in because it just says characters as far as credits, so I don't know how hands-on it was. but it has that air about it of just flatly delivered, completely nonsensical responses.
Yeah, I imagine they gave him the dialogue pass on this flick. Just they gave him free reign to put in as many clips as he wants. That's, not fact or anything. That's just me speculating. But it, like you said, it's just drenching to me with Mel Brooks's comedy.
And I really hate to, because normally I like to take a minute and just kind of delve into some things before we go into the actual plot of it. But I'll be honest, I'm so psyched to talk about this movie, about its story, about what happens, about all of the jokes. There are so many jokes in this movie that are genuinely popping. And again, it's a PG movie, so they don't get to, well, back in the 80s, they get one fuck and they used it and it was hilarious. But all of this is just dialogue based and it's very bit heavy. And 65 to 70% of the bits work. And nowadays in comedy, there are a bunch of popular comedy movies that 40% of beats work. And this one, I was laughing at least 60% of the time. So with your blessing, Papa Radon, do you think we could go into my personal favorite segment of the show? God Save the Screen. Welcome to God Save the Screen, the segment of the show where we get into the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts, the meat and potatoes of the plot. We'll go through the story in a summary type of fashion and then go off on little tangents of bits we like, bits we didn't like, bits we were kind of meh on. And without further ado, let's get into it, Jesse. So we open the film with this very James Bond type of musical number. And I cannot remember it off the top of my head. There's a phrase that haunts the opening and ending of this movie. Can you tell me what it is?
Oh, yeah. You won't believe that we made a movie called The Nude Bomb and it's rated PG.
Not only did you call it The Nude Bomb, there is solid rack in this movie.
Oh,
and
yeah.
A lot of solid man butt.
There's a lot of that, but I don't want to skip it just yet because that comes at an awesome point in this movie. Yeah, it starts off with Maxwell Smart in a plane, right?
And he's presumably undercover. And this is right when I knew that this was not going to be the same viewing experience that I've had with every other film in this podcast, because he's on the plane, presumably undercover, and all of a sudden you hear ringing and someone just leans over and says, "Your shoe's ringing." And he just gets real wide-eyed and he tries to play it off.
Oh, I thought it was you.
Yeah. And eventually he has to answer his shoe because someone pulls a gun out. And then he answers the phone and it's his superior. Is it the chief or Carruthers? Those are two different characters.
It was chief. Yeah, it was the chief.
It was the chief. And he goes, "Maxwell, where are you at?" He goes, "I'm on a plane." And all of a sudden a gun comes into frame about 2 inches from his head. "I think they know who I am."
Yep. Oh man. He's like, "Well, how many men do you see?" "Well, including the one that's got a gun in my face, 9. "Well, deal with it and get back to me as soon as you can." "Yes, chief." And he closes his shoe and then he proceeds to just jump out of this plane. And then they have a skydiving segment that he doesn't survive.
And another thing about the stunt work in this movie is deceivingly amazing because it's a spy movie. And like you said, we open with a sky jump bit and clearly we have the camera following around the 9 people, including Maxwell, floating amid the sky. Mm-hmm. And like you said, he doesn't survive because he has a parachute. And one of the first gags is he gets back on the phone with the chief and he says, "Oh, I'm about to pull my chute. I'll be on the ground in about 2 minutes." And then he pulls the chute and the entire rig comes off and it falls into the air and he goes, "Make that 2 seconds." And then he just falls off the fucking frame and presumably lands to the ground. Next scene, he's fine.
Yeah, but he doesn't die. Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, the suspension of disbelief has to be there for this entire film because it gets out there, man. I mean, it's up there with the Airplane movies. It's up there with
at least Austin Powers too.
Austin Powers, Naked Gun, Fully Loaded, or whatever that Emilio Estevez movie was that came out. Oh my God. It's very much that. It's just as slapsticky gets. So yeah, he makes it to the ground and he ends up escaping.
At that point, are we introduced to our villain?
I believe so. That's whenever we're introduced to our villain, who is Mr. Thimblefingers, or Norman Saint Sauvage is what his name is, and he's just kind of like got a red sock over his face as he's dressed in like designer clothing, and then he has a hench person who's missing a hand and missing an eye, and he's kind of like his right hand guy who's helping him to make the nude bomb happen.
Well, did you say right hand guy intentionally, knowing he doesn't have a right hand?
No, I did not, but it's funny.
Well, then I was about to give you mad props, but now I'm just like kind of disappointed. Yeah.
Hey, it just comes natural, man. I don't have to think about it. It just happens.
Oh, it comes natural, no machinery required.
There you go.
Haha.
So yeah, we're introduced to old Thimblefingers, and he's talking about the nude bomb and how it's this new thing that is going to render the world of all of its clothing and its horrible fabric, and he'll be the only clothing distributor in the world, and he'll make all this money, and clothing will be a thing of the past, yada yada yada. After that, we get back with Agent 86.
Agent 86, Maxwell Spark. Put some respect on his name.
Sorry, my bad. Yep, Agent 86. And he is now talking with the chief again, and he's being called into action to help with this nefarious plot that's happening.
And the way they do this bit is he gets out of, I think it's an airport, and he gets into a taxi, and they pull the taxi into the back of a friggin' 18-wheeler. And they keep moving the 18-wheeler, and all of these people pile into this taxi in the back of this 18-wheeler, and they go, start the wash, and a fucking car wash just appears in the back of this 18-wheeler. There's like 4 different layers of protection to talk about their mission.
Yeah, inside of this car that is now fully packed full of people, including Agent 22. Agent 34.
Agent 36.
36. Well, there's an Agent 34. And then there's an Agent 36. Agent 34, I guess, is the Russian chick.
I thought it was Agent 36. No. You're right. It's Agent 34. If you're dyslexic, this episode is going to fuck with you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's how dyslexia works, hearing numbers.
Anyways, okay. So there's another agent that's in the car with them. And then there's Carruthers, who is kind of like the Q character from James Bond. He's the machine guy. He's the one who makes Bond's gadgets, or makes Maxwell's gadgets, which he makes some doozies in this flick. Then you also have the twins, who I guess are kind of like the analytics experts and stuff like that. And then of course you have the chief, who's driving the vehicle. And so they're trying to like figure out the plan. And he's like, okay, well, I'll need everybody's names first. And then Carruthers starts talking. He's like, hold on, women first. And then like he's just fucking with Carruthers the entire time. And I absolutely loved it.
Just the running gags throughout this entire movie, the Carruthers bit, and there's a guy called Agent 13,
who
I believe has a reference in the Get Smart film, starring Steve Carell and Dwayne Johnson. It's when Bill Murray, when he's that guy in the tree. Mm-hmm. It's that idea, but he appears in so many different places. Like at one point, he appears in the side of a plane. And I can't remember his first appearance, but he appears in like a mirror.
He appears in a toilet on the plane.
That's later in the movie, but after he's done talking to him and his head's in the toilet, 86 flushes the toilet, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, 13," and all you hear is, "It's okay, Maxwell."
Oh man, yeah, no, that those running bits are always great. Let's see. So they're talking about the plot, and one of my favorite little quips that he says in it is that Agent 36 is like, "Oh, I've heard a lot about you, Agent 86." And he's like, "Well, don't you want to hear my side of it first?" She's like, "I think you're amazing." "Oh, so you have heard my side of it."
Just loved it. I do not understand why people crap on this movie so hard. The characterization, like the effects could be a little bit better as far as Foley goes, but we'll get to that.
Sure. But it also plays into the cheesiness of what it is. Like it makes sense in the context of this film. Like that's the thing between this film and other films. It's like, yes, other films had hilarious parts that weren't intentionally made to be hilarious. These are intentionally made to make you laugh. I mean, in Windows, whenever the cat falls on the floor, that's supposed to scare the shit out of us, but we're busting a gut.
Yeah, and I feel that because, like you said, there's been a couple of fighting instances up to this point, and it's mostly just I'm just gonna call him Maxwell Smart. It's mostly just Maxwell Smart lightly pressing the like fat part of his palm onto someone's like forehead or someone's back, and just going. It's essentially Austin Powers' judo chop without him yelling judo chop.
Yeah.
And that's every combat scene.
Oh, and then while they're in the car, and I think it's after they get done having their little discussion and meeting, and it's Chief and Maxwell, and they're taking him to his apartment where Carruthers is and stuff, and we get all the gadgets at the apartment. We'll get to that here in a sec. But he ends up having a conversation with the president, and he's in a car phone, and he's using the car phone, and he's talking to him, and he's losing signal, and the president's actually driving in the car right next to him, so they just roll down the windows and just start having the conversation, just yelling it across the way from each other. Loved it.
At one point, somebody cuts off the president, and the president goes, "Up your ass!" And Max goes, "What, sir?" Not you.
You want me to shove what? Yeah. Yeah. And then they finally get to the apartment complex, and they're showing Maxwell his new digs while he's working on this assignment. And, they show you how you ring the knocker twice and you knock the doorbell 3 times, and then the wall opens up, and that's how you get into this place. If you open the door, then the door electrocutes you. You have to go through the wall.
So the wall's the door and the door's the wall.
And so they go through this little, just a little segment where, it's kind of the Q type character who's showing James Bond all of his new gadgets and gizmos that he's got hidden throughout the house. And he shows him a few things, like he shows him his new phone, which has got touch tone now. It's no longer a rotary dial. It's now touch tone, which is, latest and greatest and fashionable for the time period of 1980.
Which this movie feels inexplicably 1960s.
It really does.
Because, that's from when the original series is.
Right. And I mean, you could tell he's definitely showing his age, John Adams, in this one. And then he's like, "Oh, the top button on the phone is how you get into your bedroom." Well, then what if I need to make a phone call? He's like, "You use the stapler." He's like, "That's ingenious."
He asks if the stapler actually staples.
Oh, yes, that's right. He's like, "No, we don't. It doesn't do that." He's like, "Oh, you need to work on that." Then he shows him the car desk, which is pretty freaking cool. He sits down in the chair at the desk, and then the calendar board comes up, and it's like a windshield, and he starts asking, "Well, how much mileage does this thing get?" It's like 37 on the highway, a 7 in the living room,
and it runs on ink. That's ingenious. That'll cure the world's fuel shortage. Unfortunately, no. I can only get this type of ink from Saudi Arabia.
Dude, I busted such a hard gut on that one, just because, I don't know, it's still kind of relevant to today, and I don't know, it's funny. It's the anytime that they make a reference from something back then, and it's still relevant today, I can't help but laugh.
Because if you don't laugh, you cry.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess that's pretty much accurate.
I know that it feels pretty self-explanatory in the title, but we've gone this long. His ultimate plan, Mr. Sauvage, is he has this thing called the Nude Bomb. And what the Nude Bomb does, we never actually said what it does.
I did.
No, when?
I did I guess whenever we were talking about his little scene where he was talking about his plot and what he was doing.
I was listening.
Mr. Thimblefingers.
Mr. Thimblefingers, yeah, you introduced him, but we didn't actually explain the functionality of the bomb.
I did. I said that the Nude Bomb renders the whole world of its fabric, and he's the only one who has fabric in the world. And so he gets rich. Yeah. Fuck you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You're good. The one person that we have not introduced at this point in time is Agent 30.
That's
Agent 22. Yeah, Andrea Howard, character who is hilarious to me. She's kind of Agent 13, where she went to spy school and she mastered in camouflage. Is what they give her the title of. But she just pops up out of nowhere in just certain scenes, and then she'll just disappear out of nowhere. And then they'll be like, "Agent 22, I'm gonna need your help here in a minute." And you'll just hear her voice, "All right, Chief, I'll be there in a sec." And Maxwell's just looking around like, where the fuck is that coming from?
My boy Don has some of the best just reactive humor in this entire thing. And that's another Mel Brooks thing, because it's the same kind of concept as like Gene Wilder and Blazing Saddles. It's not necessarily how you deliver a joke, it's how you kind of react to the absurdity around you. And that is just his entire character, and it works so well.
Well, and I love Don Adams for the fact that it's also, I guess, a lot of that Mel Brooks type comedy where, you know, I'm actually surprised for a movie of its time period. It had some strong female actresses in it, and it was really cool in that respect because all of the female agents were shown to be smarter than Maxwell. You know, like, and I appreciated that about it was the fact that like they didn't play into like the femme fatale, or not the femme fatale, but like the damsel in distress and play those type of arcs with it. They made it really a female forward movie, or at least a female powering movie, and gave them roles that were essential to the story and plot. And they weren't necessarily just there for looks.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of always been, or not always, but Mel Brooks did way better than other people of that time. Like clearly, it's still not the perfect representation, but you know, it's the same thing. It's the same thing in Young Frankenstein, because those two roles could have easily just been reserved for, like, I hate to say this, like placeholder women. Like just actresses that the studio particularly didn't care about, but he went out of his way to make them funny and to give them their own jokes. But he also does that in Blazing Saddles. Like it's in quite a few of his films. And like you said, they make you actually think that they're going to lean into like the treacherous Bond girl, because that's a big theme in like most Bond movies. They lean into that sometimes, but then they subvert it. And it's not perfect, but it dates it. It surprisingly dates itself pretty well. Like there's a couple of spots here and there that you could be like, but if you watch like any National Lampoons from this period, it's eons ahead of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a movie that it respects everybody involved with it. And if anybody's going to be the butt of the joke, it's going to be Maxwell.
Yeah. And that's what, honestly, that could be a reason that it was panned when it was, is because I think a lot of the humor back then, like particularly if you watch like Animal House, for instance, a lot of it is reductive and kind of picking on people. Like that's just kind of how what people thought was funny back then. This film, it relies more on like wit and situations and like reactions to crazy things. And I think maybe moviegoers and critics at the time were like, oh my God, they're not laughing at a brown person or a woman. This isn't funny. Like that might have been the response at the time. But I think this movie is, lack of intending a pun, it's pretty smart.
Yeah, I agree with that. Back to the plot of it, though. Carruthers leaves the apartment and the chief is talking with Maxwell, and they realize that they hear somebody in the bedroom. So they open it up and they see one of Carruthers' men. He's talking to him. And he's like, I don't trust him. He's like, why don't you trust him? Well, he's got an accent. It's like, what kind of accent? Chinese. Chinese? What are you talking about? And he's like, well, would you believe Japanese? Just another like quick little bit that's hilarious to me. And then everybody fucks off except for Agent 22. And they have a little repartee back and forth about, listen, Agent 22, I'm not going to sleep with you while I'm on the case. Before a case, maybe. After a case, definitely. But during a case, never. And so she's just kind of rolling her eyes at him. It's like, whatever, if you need me, call me. And so she's heading out the door. And I love, as she's walking out the door, he's just like, in Agent 22, after, definitely. And they're supposed to leave you with this idea like, oh, he just said something like super like suave. And I just like slapped my head, you know, just face palm. It was fantastic.
There's nothing quite like that Don Addy misogyny. It's very sexy.
And then they build onto it too, because he hears somebody else in the room. And so he goes back into his bedroom, and sure enough, Agent 36, 34, whatever, is laying on the bed. And she's like, not naked, but she's in like her bathrobe.
She's in his bathrobe.
And so she's like, I'm sorry, I took a shower and I just kind of fell asleep on the bed. And I'm so sorry. If you can hand me my stuff, I'll go get dressed. And so he grabs her bra and panties. And then sure enough, Agent 22 comes back and sees everything. And he like explains the whole thing in vivid detail to her. And he's like, no, and this happened. And then you walked out. And then I saw her. And then I grabbed her stuff because she was going to get her in. And then you walked in. And that's exactly what happened. And what do you think about that? And she's just like, bullshit.
That's the last time I ever tell the truth to a woman.
Oh my God. This movie, man, it's great. It's fantastic.
It's absolutely. The thing about this movie is literally I watched it like during work today. Like I watched it from 2 to 4, and I have a hard time like keeping track of the plot just because all the jokes are so funny, and the memorable parts are like, oh, this bit was funny, this bit was funny, this bit was funny, and it's really hard for me to tie together the bits.
Yeah, well, it's also hard for me too, because just for our viewers at home, when we're talking about the plot and everything, we pull up, the plot on Wikipedia or something, just have something like as a guide to go along with. And I mean, the plot is super minuscule on this one. I mean, it's absolutely nothing. So trying to recall everything whenever you're sitting there laughing pretty much the whole time, it's really hard to do.
And it's hard to take notes in that environment too, because I'm too busy paying attention.
Right. Exactly. At this point, after they've gone over everything in the apartment, he's sent on his first mission, which is to this, I guess, clothing distributor, this Italian guy who has information about where they can find the person who's creating the nude bomb. They go over to his place of business to find him shot. And they have this whole bit back and forth where he's like, it's so hot. And he falls over on the desk thinking he's dead. And so Maxwell's like, call the morgue. And then he picks back up and he starts talking. He's like, call an ambulance. And so he puts down the phone, picks back up, and guy falls over again. Lather, rinse, repeat. And it just went on for like, a good 3-4 minutes back and forth with this guy about call an ambulance, call a morgue, call an ambulance, call a morgue. And the whole time he's giving him little bits of information and he can't really talk. So he's humming a lot of information, like humming when the Saints go marching in and humming Hello, Dolly. So obviously the informant's name is Dolly, making big leaps in judgment based off of absolutely nothing. One of my favorite bits, though, of that little segment, though, was like he could barely talk and he was just, so Maxwell leans in to hear what he's saying. And Agent 22's like, well, what did he say? He said he wants me to take my hand off his crotch. What did he say that time? He says he wants you to put your hand in his crotch.
Didn't we just get done talking about like how woman forward this movie was?
Well, she didn't do it.
That doesn't make it okay. But,
it was a man's dying wish. All right.
They did, but I was just about to say it piggybacks into another Dynamite bit where they got him on this gurney and they're just banging him through like rows and rows and rows of hospital doors because eventually they do decide on a hospital between morgue and hospital. And this is where we get our one F word, because after they keep questioning him, but the back of the gurney / stretcher thing just keeps banging in the back of these hospital doors, just boom, boom, boom. And then after the last one, he just goes, is this the fucking Indianapolis 500? God damn it.
Oh, yeah. And he starts speaking Yiddish and stuff. It's great as they're wheeling him into the surgery. Oh, man. Yeah. And then so they end up getting the information, which ends up leading them to a chick named Dolly. And they get that from the twins, the analytic twins. They get that information.
I just looked on the cast list, and the entire time I thought it was a really lowbrow joke. Her name is Von Seckenberg. I thought it was Von Suckenberg. And my initial thought was, oh, that's just lazy.
It's Ivana Hump a lot.
Exactly.
So he ends up getting information and it takes him to Russia, and he ends up meeting with like a Russian double agent type thing. She's like, do you ski? He acts all insulted. He's like, I'm going to pretend you didn't ask me that. No. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Before we even get him into Russia, they're walking out of, I guess, their head office. And then we get that glorious stunt sequence, which was the guy that's missing a hand and has an eye patch, does a drive-by with a gun, and he's about to run Maxwell over. And Maxwell does this sweet baller move where he just like turns around, falls backwards, and lets the car like jump the curb and go right over him. And then he just pops up and just starts shooting this car, and then it explodes. And the guy ends up walking away unscathed. But that whole sequence happens, and Maxwell Smart looks like an absolute baller. And the chief and Agent 22 go up to him. They're like, Maxwell, that was amazing. But when did you come up with that? He was like, I thought of it as soon as my foot hit this banana peel. And dude, I like to have died laughing.
That's the single funniest joke in the movie.
Hands down the funniest joke in this movie. It was great.
He just fucking, the second my foot hit this banana peel. just so deadpan.
Oh yeah, I mean, they had to have actually like run over him, or like actually had the stunt person who's playing Maxwell actually get run over or whatever, and for that stunt to actually be pulled off. And it was just like a baller stunt followed by the most deadpan joke. Oh, it was amazing.
How was this nominated for Worst Picture?
Doesn't make sense. Make sense. It's people who don't understand satire.
Like
that's what it comes down to.
And that's not like a Proud Boys way either. This is like real satire.
Yeah. Well, this is satire in the way that like Blazing Saddles is satire. The way that, you know,
Men in Tights is
satire. Yeah, it's all of that wrapped into just a spy movie. It's essentially Austin Powers just done in 1980 and not 2000 or 99 whenever Austin Powers 1 came out.
Well, anywho, Time's arrow marches forward. That's the thing about this movie. It's so good. I just want to talk about every aspect of it.
I know, but we got to move forward. So he gets to Russia, and we have this whole skiing segment where he's having to ski down and keep up with this agent. That's whenever they start like bringing in the stunt doubles, like super hardcore, and he's bumbling along, and then all of a sudden he's just doing like flips in the air, and you can just tell like it's not him doing it. You know, they played it for a joke, and it hit. Like I popped on it.
You're forgetting one of the best jokes in the movie is when he gets the information when he's in Russia, or he gets the information amidst the avalanche, because it's this singular house on like this big snowy mountain. And he walks into Mrs. von Seckenberg's house, and he's still got his skis on, and he's marching through the house. And she goes, "Don't you want to leave your skis outside in this neighborhood?"
and then he ends up getting them stuck in the fireplace. So he just ends up throwing the whole thing in the fireplace and just says, "Fuck it, to hell with it." Oh man. And so what does he find out from this chick? He ends up like, he's supposed to seduce her, and so he's putting on his best lines and stuff like that, which are not landing at all. And then he finds out that she used to be married to Norman Saint Sauvage, who is the creator of the Nude Bomb, and she has an idea of where it's located at. That's basically all that happens in Russia, besides the avalanche. That I mean, it's just as cheesily done as you could possibly think. A couple guys come into the cabin, and they end up in a little bit of a tussle, and ends up causing the avalanche. And then like there's not even really like a punchline to it or anything like that. It's just like avalanche happens, and then he's back in the States. He's back in his like apartment thing, right?
Pretty much. That's another thing about this movie. Like, they don't do very well with establishing shots.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of go from one location to the other, because you can tell. We'll get into the box office numbers a little bit later, and like the production budget of where we can find them.
I think this brings us to Universal Studios, because part of the information that he got was for another lady who helped him with the making of the Nude Bomb. They're like, "Oh, she used to be an astrophysicist." The little joke was put in there of like, "Well, what does she do now?" She's a studio guide at Universal Studios. Oh, she's moving up in the world.
Yeah. And then you can tell that this was the portion where they were like, fuck it, no budget, go in the backyard.
Yeah, because they just took over the Universal Studios backlot. Like if you've ever taken the Universal Studios tour of their backlot, they essentially just demolished this tour ride. And it was fantastic. I mean, he's going there because he's trying to find this informant, and he's trying to get some information, and she's one of the studio drivers. And while he's there and he's looking for this person, the man with the eye patch in one hand shows up and starts chasing him around the whole place. So it ends up being like a Benny Hill segment where they're just going through everything you can do on the studio tour. It's got the Battlestar Galactica people. They end up going through the whole like Jaws pit. Like he ends up trying to like dive in the water and try to get away from Maxwell Smart. And all of a sudden you just see Bruce from Jaws in the background coming up. And honestly, I'm surprised they got away with that because, you know, they end up having a shot of one of them in its mouth as it's floating away. And I'm like, man, one little thing goes wrong with those mechanics and that little machine chops you in half. So I'm surprised they actually got away with that one. And then they end up crashing the studio cart. They end up like running through a commercial set that was happening at that point in time. And like, you could just tell it was essentially a advertising ploy for Universal Studios. As a matter of fact, I just got back from going to Universal Studios. I know we talked about it on our last podcast that I had gone to California and got engaged and stuff like that. Woohoo. Love you, Krista. Anyways.
Look at you being happy and stuff. Congratulations. You're so happy.
But
in your fulfilled life with your fulfilled relationships. I'm going to go back to my full-size mattress and my 40-inch TV. Fuck you.
Sorry, man. If you are single and ready to mingle, just hit up our email address at rffpod.com. We'd love to see your headshots, or at least Kieran would, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so, my anxiety's kicking in. You know that was a joke, right?
Oh, I know. Okay. I know, absolutely.
I'm very happy for you.
Thank you very much, man. But so we were in line at Universal Studios for the studio tour, and they literally played this entire scene while you're standing in line for this ride. So fuck you. You can't tell me that this is a terrible movie, and yet the Universal Studios tour uses it constantly.
How much has the tour changed? Because I went there in like 2006. And from what I remember, that tour is not all that different.
Well, it wasn't all that different then, but remember it was in, I guess, like it was like the mid to 2000s. It had a fire, so it lost the King Kong ride, and it lost like the Back to the Future segment and stuff like that.
I saw King Kong when I went.
No, it was because if you went in 2006, I think it was after that it happened. Because was it the old King Kong ride where you're like in the studio tour and it's almost like you're going next to its mouth and shit like that?
Yeah, it scared the shit out of me.
Okay. It's not that anymore. So it's now it's kind of like a 3D ride. You go into this like tunnel thing, and like this whole 3D projection from Peter Jackson's King Kong happens around you. Not as fun in my book. I digress. It was still a fun ride. Bruce is still there. I got to see the Psycho house. They also had sets from the new movie that just came out here recently, Nope. They had the whole set from Nope there. So it was really, really cool. I got to see it.
Oh, yeah, because that ranch looks like a back lot any day of the week.
So it wasn't actually originally on the back lot. It wasn't set up there, but they ended up moving it to the back lot after it was completed filming because they loved the set so much. So now it's part of the studio tour. There you go.
That's really neat. Back to titties.
Yeah, back to titties. Yes, as soon as we get this, like, what is it? The studio driver cart thing that carries all of the people. I can't even think of
It's a shuttle, like a tram.
Yeah, a tram, basically. They're having a tram race and they're trying to like catch each other. Well, they're trying to go through this water area and they end up getting loaded down and they need to lose some weight. So they tell all the people that they can walk on water. So just jump out and jump into the water, everybody. So everybody jumps out, of course. For a movie that's rated PG, and granted, this was before PG-13 was ever a rating, you see full frontal titties. And the only reason why they got away with it is because she literally had her shirt on. But you could see full frontal rack these giant pepperoni nipples, all of it.
You don't have to assign a meat to it, Jesse.
Well, hey, man, I can't help it. It was there.
Currency.
I synced it.
Currency, penny, nickel, half dollar, shit. Be a gentleman.
Fair. Okay. It was a coin from the Richer series size. No.
Let's stop talking about this poor woman's nipples.
It was a piece of 8 size from Pirates of the Caribbean. And just as rigid. Anyways.
I was about to say a lot of dude ass in this movie too.
There was a lot of dude ass.
When they're testing out the Nude Bomb, they do like a bunch of mini bombs everywhere. And one of them's like a football team. So you see like a huddle of dudes like bent over getting half a prostate exam. Again, PG movie.
Yeah. Yeah. For what PG is. I mean, and everybody's smoking. Like everybody.
Well, yeah. They didn't stop doing that shit till like 97.
I know. Yeah, hell, you still got it in Disney movies up until that point. So anyways, after the whole studio chase, this is when the guy with the eye patch and the one arm gets got, right? He dies.
Yep.
Yeah, they get their last bit of information to figure out where Norman Saint Sauvage, the guy who's got the nude bomb, they figure out where he is. This is also the point when the chief turns on them, and they think that the chief has gone double agent and is ratting them out because obviously everywhere they go, they keep running into chaos agents. So someone within the organization is ratting them out, and they know every move that they're making. He's trying to figure out who exactly it was. Well, everybody shows up on the plane for the last mission except for the chief. So it's obviously the chief. And so we end up getting evil chief, and they end up having to subdue him and arrest him. There's more to that story, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. And so they end up going to this remote island. They find a chief, and they're confused because they know that they just locked up the chief in their maximum security prison. And so they don't understand why there's another chief here. They end up knocking out all the guards. They save Chief, and they're trying to find Norman Saint Sauvage on this island. Well, they end up coming across the entrance to his lair, and the entrance to his lair is a giant zipper on the side of this fucking mountain. They start to unzip the zipper, and Agent 22 is like, oh, I wonder what's in there. Maxwell's like, easy, Agent 22. You don't know what's about to pop out of that thing.
No, and when he walks up, he goes, that's the second biggest zipper I've ever seen.
Yeah. Just little things like that. And then the zipper opens up, and you see like a henchwoman, and they realize that that's the entrance to the place. And then we get to the big climactic ending where Maxwell Smart and Norman Saint Sauvage, he starts telling him his plan, and it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if they give me the money. I'm still going to drop the nude bomb because I am chaos, and chaos will rule, and blah, 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 and giving them the whole spiel. And then they're like, well, how are you going to make clothing for everybody in the world? And he ends up like showing this tailor who is apparently like the best tailor in the world. And he's like, well, you go behind that door over there. And she does, and it pops out 2 of them. And so he's got this cloning machine that is so left field, came out of nowhere. And the only indication that you had was whenever you put 2 and 2 together with the chief, and the reason why there was an evil chief and a good chief. It was just a way that they could have a twist and it be somebody that we knew from the series, and then immediately go back on and be like, it's fine. He's not a bad guy. He's going to be around for our spinoff series that we do after this.
Did they have a spinoff after this?
They had a renaissance, and he came back as Maxwell Smart in like I guess in the early 80s. And so, yeah, and this was kind of the jumping off point for that renaissance.
Eat shit, Razzies.
Yeah, right. It still spurred that, and it also got a movie with Steve Carell that ended up making like $280 million at the box office. So you can call this a failure all you want. Doesn't negate the fact that it has way more TV shows than I've ever done. It's made more money at a box office than I've done. So call it a bad movie all you want.
It's not. Anyway, we're almost there.
We are almost there. So Norman Saint Sauvage has that weird mask on. It's like a sock, basically. Maxwell starts putting two and two together who Norman Saint Sauvage really is. And he pulls the mask off to reveal that it's the same guy who was the man with the eye patch and the one arm. It's just him without all of that stuff. And lo and behold, he's a clone. So that's the reason why it's the same person. We get into the last battle segment of this film, and it ends basically with them continuously cloning each other and fighting each other. Am I missing anything here, Kieran?
Not before the finale, no, because it's just a shitload of like early chroma key work, and it works okay, better than Xanadu would have done it, I think.
Yeah, no, I can agree with you there. And even for something that was like, a TV show turned into a movie, probably had a smaller budget, it did really good with this one. I will admit, like it fooled me, and I loved how they had such a multitude of different Maxwells and Norman Saint Sauvages, because they could have really easily gotten away with, they cloned them 2 or 3 times, and you show them fighting over here, show them fighting over here, show them fighting over here, cool, done. But no, they went everywhere. So that they had to reshoot them same shots an ungodly amount of times. So I found that very interesting, and I thought that was kind of cool, because it took them forever to pull that off. And then Agent 22 comes into the mix as well. They end up fooling Norman Saint Sauvage, and he escapes, doesn't he? Because the desk hasn't come into play yet.
No. He dies.
He dies?
He dies because he's in the chair. There's a mechanism because there's that bond mechanism that he gets caught in that threatens his life, but it has a weirdly specific amount of time before it actually kills him. And in this case, it's a chair that elevates into a hole in the wall with a bunch of spikes coming down. And then eventually the fight ends, and
that's right. All the thimbles drop down. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's what ends up happening. He ends up dying. Then we get a hilarious little bit, and they actually drag this out for a little while, and I just thought it was hilarious, where Agent 22 is down. Maxwell needs to get her out, and he's going to carry her out all romantically. He can't pick her up, and she's too heavy, so he starts trying to pick her up in different just weird ways, and then he can't do it, so he ends up dragging her, and she's like, you know what? I'll just walk. He's like, no, I got you. We're fine. We'll get through this. And he's like, no, if you just let go of me, I can get up. And it was a pretty funny segment in my eyes, but
it felt real Peter Griffin, but in a good way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And so the evil lair is about to explode, and they end up making it out just in time, talking about, we're so happy that we were able to fix this, and we're so happy that we didn't cause the nude bomb from happening, and hopefully there won't be any fallout from the nude bomb. And sure enough, as soon as they say that, all of their clothes disappear as Agent 22 and Maxwell are about to kiss nonetheless. And so that's how they end the film, is them running to their car butt naked, and instead of being able to see them in the camera, you just see the end come up on their naked bodies. And that's pretty much the meat and potatoes of the story. I really enjoyed this film. I can't really speak highly of it enough. I think it was enjoyable. I thought it was funny. I thought it was witty. It had some points in it that I didn't see coming. Overall, I think the acting was done very well by Don Adams and really the whole cast. It's definitely worth the watch. I mean, if you like those silly slapstick stuff, if you are a fan of Naked Gun, if you are a fan of Airplane, if you are a fan of Austin Powers, if you are a fan of any of that slapsticky shit, it is fantastic. Give it a watch.
I must concur, my friend. You mind if we move on to the next segment?
Yeah, I guess it's about that time. Next up, we have the Can't Buy Me Love Critic Review of the Day. It's the Can't Buy Me Love Reviews of the Day. Come on, let's hear them out. Oh, hell nah. All right, for my critic review, I actually have somebody who kind of thinks a little bit like we do. And I think that we're going to have to do this for this film because usually we try to find somebody who thinks the opposite we do. However, I really liked this film, so I'm going to look for somebody who kind of feels the same way I do, and I found somebody. This one is from Pelrad, Pelrad. They gave it a 9 out of 10 stars. They say, like the Austin Powers movies, Get Smart is a spoof of spy movies like the James Bond series, and the Nude Bomb, made at the height of the Cold War in early 1980s, concerns Maxwell Smart, Agent 86, the guy with the shoe phone, pursuing the madman who has developed a bomb that, if exploded, render everyone without clothing. This is an underrated movie and works well even with the absence of the original supporting cast from the 1960s television series. Almost, but not quite as funny as The Naked Gun. 9 out of 10, which I can totally get behind.
I also had the same kind of mentality when it came to my quote. This one is going to be off of Letterboxd from user Mike Frollo, double L. 3 stars you gave it. Incredibly wild idea to make a parody of Roger Moore Bond movies that looks like it had the episode of an episode of Fantasy Island. There. Anyway, in spite of pretty much every choice made here, I still had fun. Don Adams still had the magic, and there's just barely enough good jokes to get you through, even though most of them are just repeats from episode of Get Smart. I think it's a little bit better than that, but I think even the most cynical take of that should be the most cynical take.
And I get it. If you're not into this slapsticky type comedy, it's probably not for you. But then again, you probably weren't that big of a fan of the Maxwell Smart TV series to begin with at that point. If you're not a fan of that type of stuff, because that's all the Get Smart TV series was slapstick after slapstick.
I got my money's worth on this with the banana peel joke alone.
Absolutely. The stunt work on that little segment alone is just amazing. All right. Well, that's all we need to know about people who thought differently or thought the same of us. Let's move on to the next segment, which is it's the end of the flick as we know it.
And I feel great.
And now, for the moment you've been waiting for, it's the end of the flick as we know it! No, seriously, get out. Go on. Get. Shoot. In this segment, we like to talk about anything that we might have missed. We like to talk about a little bit of trivia. We'll maybe go over some box office numbers, maybe hit on some just little random facts about the thing. And if you have any questions or if you have anything that we might miss in this segment, you can always hit us up at rffpod@gmail.com and let us know of anything we missed. We want to start getting you guys involved. We want y'all to be part of this program as much as possible. So if you have anything to say about these movies that we've already talked about, please shoot us an email. Let us know what you think, and we might include it in an episode if it's good enough.
I am a whore for attention and interaction. And given anything, positive or negative, I will respond promptly and justly. I am your mold. Make me something.
I don't know where to go with that one. I'm just gonna try to breeze past it as much as possible. Let's see. Any trivia? Any new facts about this film that we haven't already covered, Kieran? Do you know anything?
This movie is super hard to find stuff on. I don't know if it had just pissed the wrong people off at the time or if it just did that badly. But as I look at it right now, the trivia section on IMDb is pretty friggin' blank.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, the only thing that I'm seeing on there is it's the only theatrical release that Get Smart movie ever got featuring the original actor, Don Adams. Everything else was on television. This was his only debut on the big screen as this character.
The only real stat I can get is the budget was $15 million.
Another thing that I actually found was, and I thought this was a little bit interesting just because my dad used to watch the old TV series, but the criminal organization Chaos appears in the movie, but the intelligent agency from the original series was called Control. Does not. It doesn't exist. The latter is replaced by PITS, PITS, which stands for Provisional Intelligence Tactical Service. Honestly, I thought Control was a little bit better of an acronym. Yeah, I think that it was because Mel Brooks and Buck Henry, the writers for it, never came up with anything for them to stand for. Control itself didn't actually have an acronym for anything. They were just called Control.
Well, you control your narrative, you see.
Well, there you go.
As far as box office numbers go, like I said, the budget was 15 million, and it makes me really sad because the ultimate box office draw was 14.7. So it almost broke even on paper. Just enough people gave a crap about this movie for it to hurt. You know what I mean?
And it's such a shame because this film really deserves more credit than it got, for sure.
Rarely do we take external reviews outside of the Can't Buy Me Love Critic of the Day. We typically keep the percentages or the point ratings out of it unless it's on the sour scale that'll come later. But I just wanted to point out it has a 5.1 on IMDb and a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is utter horse shit, man. Like, it's at least a 6.5 and 65%, I think. And that is not like a stretch at all. What do you think?
No, I agree because it again, I will attest to this that if you think this movie's bad, then you must think that Airplane's bad. You must think The Naked Gun's bad. You must think that Austin Powers is bad. You must think that any movie that is drenched in satire that is maybe not always the most PC of satires, then I can see where you would be a little bit offended by this movie. But overall, man, I thought it was great. I thought it was awesome.
I don't think it's so much of an offensive thing. I think it's more of like a they didn't get it thing. I think it might have just been a little too smart for some people.
Maybe. I mean, it's essentially the same thing as with Blazing Saddles, and a lot of people can't get past the
I said it was too smart.
Yeah, I got you.
You can't see it, but I'm pointing at it.
Yes, he still has the finger guns at me. Stop it.
No, now I have the finger guns. The other time it was just a point. I was in sport mode.
That's where you're wrong, bucko.
That's where you're wrong, buckaroo.
So yeah, I think you know where we stand with this movie if it hasn't been explained already. But if you really need to know where it rates for us, I think it's time we put it on the sour scale.
Let's go.
Kieran, what do you rate this movie?
That's a 1, baby.
That's a 1?
That's an easy 1. Xanadu's down to number 2.
Ooh.
We got Saturn at 5. Or Saturn 6 at 5.
Saturn 3.
Saturn 3 at 5. Too many numbers on this show. And then we got Raise the Titanic at 7. And then we got Windows at 10. And I do not predict 1 or 10 changing because I've seen Cruising before that's coming up. And there is a heavy contender in this particular Razzie class that was nominated for Worst Picture, which is considered one of the greatest movies of all time, at least in its genre. I'll leave it on you to go Google that class. One will stick out very, very sore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will stick out very sore, but we'll get to that in October. Hintity, hint, hint, hint.
That's not 5 shadows. That's foreshadowing.
On the sour scale, I would have to rate this one. Same as you. I'm going to put it at my top. It's number 1. I mean, it's funny for the purpose of being funny. It hits on all categories to me. The acting's great. I think the set dressing, even though somewhat cheesy, is appropriate for the time, place, and everything about this film because it really is a film that's made in 1980 that feels like the 1960s. It feels like it was made whenever the original series was made. And I get that there was a lot of switch up. There wasn't the same cast members and stuff like that. The only person who was returning was the titular character. And still, they made it entertaining. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't think there's anything that's going to top it for best movie of this podcast for this year of 1980. I think it's going to remain there. Windows is going to be hard to beat, but we do have some coming up. I mean, we've got Cruising, we got Can't Stop the Music. We got a few of them that I'm dreading to a certain extent. I guess since this was number 5, the 5th film that we've done, this was a good, I guess, palate cleanser before we start getting into some real shit again.
The nitty shitty, if you will.
Yes, the nitty shitty. So yes, I would put this at number 1, which actually breaks up my whole scale. So this is number 1. Xanadu I have at number 4. Saturn 3 at 5. I have Raising the Titanic at 6. Windows at 7, which I'm sure is going to be going down that list some more as well. So yeah, I don't see it getting any better than this movie for 1980. Hands down, would recommend. Go out there, watch it. You can't find it on any streaming platforms at this point in time. Find it any way you can. I found it online. You can too. Check it out if you got a chance. If you like Austin Powers, you'll love this. Have I blown this movie enough?
I think I'll lick its balls a little bit more.
I was about to say, have I stroked that shaft?
I think that we just need. I think
we just need to stick a finger in the asshole of this podcast, and I think we're good to go.
I don't know, baby. I'm just starting to unsheath it, because in my mind, the Nude Bomb is Catholic.
I don't know why, but okay. I'll take it.
For the sake of a foreskin joke, that's why. Catholic people have their foreskin.
Do they? I don't know. Yeah. I'm not Catholic.
Catholic people have their foreskin because, the circumcision was more of a Hebrew it's a common thing, but most people I know who, which I hate that I know that some people are circumcised and some people are circumcised in my real life, but everybody I know who's not circumcised, 90% of them are Catholics.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well,
you don't have these conversations with your friends? Nope.
I can't say I do. But hey, man, I'm not judging. To each their own.
Hey, so. Jesse Rod, I'm gonna put you on the spot right now. Are you circumcised?
No, I am not. Wait, yes, I am.
Okay.
I had to think about it there for a second, but yes, I am.
I too am.
No, it's not. It is not a torpedo. It's not an anteater. Anyways, yeah, I think that's pretty much covers it for this film. I think there's not really much else we can talk about. Kieran, is there anything else you can think of, my dude?
Man, it's just I had a great time, and I think now's a good time as any to let's check out some plugs, not drugs. Let's go on and pass the lighter, bud.
You got it, buddy.
Plugs, not drugs.
Man, fuck these drugs. I think it's time we spread some plugs. You got those plugs?
Hey man, let me get some of them plugs.
I'd say it is baby for a plug. In Plugs Not Drugs, we talk about everything that is not the film. We like to talk about everything that we have going on in our personal lives. If there's anything that we want to plug, and I'm sure we've got the usual here. Kieran, what you got to plug, bud?
Let's see, I always get the band Radio War, RADIOWORE. We are consistently releasing music on a semi-regular basis.
Consistently? Music on
okay. I heard it.
I'm there.
I heard it. Let's see. I got this. Then
what about your other podcast?
I don't want to make any promises, man.
Oh, okay, fair enough. No, that's quite all right. That's quite all right.
No, season 2 of Card Marks will be around shortly. As soon as we get our first big episode lined up, because I'm trying to line up a certain interview with a certain somebody who's decently big in the infotainment industry, and I really want to kick off the season with that. But other than that, we have the movie the short film that I assistant directed for Jesse, Daddy's Girl. It's out on YouTube right now. You can go see that labor of love, and I'll pass the baton over to my friend Jesse Rod.
Yep. You can also see it on our website at www.roddenreels.com. You can find out more information there as well. We've got posters for you that you can download for free. And we also have merchandise for it. So we have some Daddy's Girl t-shirts. We have one that has just the Daddy's Girl logo with the eyes. And then we have one that shows off our laurels, all of our accomplishments that we received on that film that we were just so proud of. Go out there. You can get those shirts now. at tpublic.com. Just search for Rod and Reels and you can find our page. You can also, I believe it's just tpublic.com/Rod and Reels, all one word. Other than that, we always have our GoFundMe campaign going for Campfire Cravings. Very soon, we're actually going to be going into production on that. And we are super excited about it. We are going to start casting here very shortly. So keep an eye out on our Facebook pages and our social medias and all of that about when that is happening. Because when it happens, it's going to be happening quick and we're going to get it done. So I'm excited about that. Go to our GoFundMe campaign, gofundme.com/Campfire Cravings for more information on that. We also have t-shirts available at tpublic.com, and all of those proceeds go towards the making of our next short film. And then we also have the podcast here, Raspberry Fields Forever. Please like, share, subscribe. We love all of our fans, and we do appreciate you guys for coming out and representing every single time and for every single episode. I hope this was a little bit of a different take for you guys. You know, we're usually shitting pretty hard on these films, and most deservingly, I think so. But this film was a little bit of a change up. We both, I think, agree that this film was actually pretty good. If you haven't seen it, give it a shot, man. Watch it on your phone while you're on the bus, something like that. It's a great film for that because it's just cheap pop after the other. It's a doozy of a movie.
It's a real smart flick. I keep on using that word. And if it's not smart in your opinion, it's at least clever. And I think clever is good for something. And it's a solid laugh every couple of minutes. I highly recommend it. And like Jesse said, go ahead. Time is running out on that Campfire Cravings GoFundMe. Well, not running out, but getting limited to where you can get stuff with our names on it.
Depending on how much you donate, it depends on how much you get. So we have some stickers available. We'll be signing some copies of the screenplay. We do appreciate everybody for going out there and donating. And we appreciate everybody for listening to our podcast here. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. So thank you so much for listening. My name is Jesse Rodden.
My name is Kieran Gibbs.
And I believe that's all the berries worth picking. We'll see you in the fields next week. Bye for now. You've been listening to Raspberry Fields Forever, a Rod and Reels podcast. Available on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you receive your podcast. You can go to the website www.rodandreels.com for even more content. Thanks for listening. Get off the stage already!